Let's begin here. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to deliver the State of the Nation address on Thursday. The economic freedom fighters have vowed to disrupt Ramaphosa's speech again. There are expectations from South Africans who want an end to the energy crisis as the cost of living soars. And now let's discuss this with IFP's Chiefwhip Narend Singh, ATM President Vuyo Zungula. We also have the DA MP Mileham and EFF spokesperson Sinawo Tambo all joining us. Thank you so much to you all for your time this afternoon. I'm going to start with a very brief question. I'll start with you, Kevin. Firstly, we saw the resignation of Deputy President David Mabuza. Of course, we saw the president saying that he's staying put until that transitional process is then done. First of all, let's start with your reaction very briefly to this.
Look, I think this is a result of the decisions that the ANC took at their Congress at the end of November, beginning of December. And as a result, David Mabuza is making way for the new blood that has come in as the Deputy President of the African National Congress. So it's not unexpected, but I would expect to see some major reshuffles in President Ramaphosa's cabinet. And I think he needs to get on with that. The nation is waiting and watching him. And for you, Vuyo too?
He should be the one that is resigning. He's the one that is the leader of the ship. And clearly, if you look at the state of the country, he's been performing dismally since 2018. So if there's any resignation that the nation would really appreciate, it is the resignation of Mr. Ramaphosa.
Sinawo?
Look, I think it is an act of naivety, foolishness and madness for anyone to think that there's anything worth expecting from the State of the Nation address given by Cyril Ramaphosa. It's like being abused and thinking that abuse is an expression of love. It's wrong, delusional. There's nothing that Cyril Ramaphosa has to offer to this country. Every sphere and sector of society is in a state of collapse under his leadership. Over the past 7 to 9 years, he has lied and made different various promises on how they're going to change the energy crisis in South Africa, and none of that has come to fruition. So to expect anything from Sona is an exercise in madness.
I suppose you've answered the second question that I would have answered, but very briefly, the first question is the party's reaction to the resignation of David Mabuza.
Look, one of our biggest concerns that we have is the secrecy around it. I mean, as things stand, the office of the Deputy President of South Africa, which handles government business, is vacant. And there's been no transparency and communication from the Office of the Presidency of South Africa. They are operating in a clandestine manner, in the same way that seems to characterize the presidency: secrecy, cover-ups, and criminality. Why would the resignation of the Deputy President be hidden from South African people? What is the purpose of that? Does it fuel speculation as to what is happening internally in the ANC? Does it not cause instability? And if it doesn't cause instability, that the Deputy President has long resigned, then what is the purpose of the position? Yeah. So we are concerned with the secrecy around it.
All right, I'll then end off with you on this round, Mr. Singh. How do you respond to the resignation of the Deputy President?
Well, firstly, one cannot understand why the President is hesitating to accept the resignation of the Deputy President. We know the Deputy President has largely been AWOL, and tradition suggests in any political party, or particularly in the ANC, that the Deputy President elected at a conference becomes the Deputy President of the country. We just hope that this time we'll have a more active Deputy President that will ensure that the mandates that have been given to him are carried out effectively and efficiently in the interest of all South Africans and not in the interest of his own political party.
Let me stay with you and, of course, go now to the State of the Nation address, Mr. Singh. This is probably one of the most critical, addresses that he has to give. Not that any others were not important, but there's so many challenges that South Africa is facing right now, an energy crisis that is really seeing businesses buckling under pressure. What are your expectations from the President?
Well, firstly, we live in hope that there will be some light at the end of the tunnel. But I do not expect, as the IFP, we do not expect that he's going to bring any light at the end of the tunnel. If you look at the country as a whole in the last few years, it is in an absolutely parlous state. If you look at the state of infrastructure, rail, road, ports, if you look at energy, you look at water. Is there any one thing that we can actually talk about as South Africans that we can say that things have been done for the benefit of the majority of South Africans? Yes, there are things that have been done for the benefit of the political party. And early on, you spoke about, I think my colleague Tambo spoke about the ship. I think the president's got to realize that he must captain the ship called South Africa and not captain the ship called the ANC. And I think he will do much, much better if that happens moving forward.
And Mr. Mileham, one of the things that, of course, is, has been in the public domain, particularly post the NEC, Lekgotla of the ANC, was that we are potentially going to see, of course, the state of disaster being declared to deal with the issue of Eskom. Of course, government saying that it's still trying to explore some of the options there, legal routes, to see if it's a possibility. Could this be the answer that South Africa is looking for when the president addresses? Could we see, should it come into fruition, is this the answer that South Africa needs to get out of the energy crisis?
Let me start by saying that the energy and electricity crisis that South Africa faces is the #1 priority for our country, for our economy, for the well-being of our citizens. We have the highest unemployment rate in the world, and it can be directly attributed to 15 years of rolling blackouts and load shedding. So we need to prioritize addressing the electricity and energy crisis in South Africa. And the president needs to put concrete plans on the table at Sona and say, this is what we're going to do, this is when we're going to do it by, and this is how we're going to do it. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that over the past 10 years or so, we've had promises after promises after promises. Every year at Sona, the president stands up and makes another statement about what they're going to do, and then they don't deliver. So the second part of that is, what is going to be done to actually deliver on those commitments that are made at Sona? How is he going to ensure that the electricity crisis is going to be dealt with? Now, coming to the state of disaster, well, this is the first indication we've had from the ANC of any sense of urgency around the electricity crisis. As I said, it's been around for 15 years, but this is the first time that the ANC have given any indication that there is actually a real problem, that they've admitted that this is a crisis of their own making. And so we need to see the state of disaster, if it's put in place. It needs to be properly monitored. It needs to be transparent. The ministers involved need to be 100% accountable to Parliament. Parliament cannot be excluded. There should be an Inspector General involved in all procurement processes to ensure that those procurements are above board, that the money is not wasted, that it is not corruption that is taking place. So there's a lot that needs to happen, a lot of checks and balances that need to happen. But what it can do is it can free up disaster management funding, which could be used in the short term to purchase diesel for Eskom and reduce load shedding by up to 2 stages. It could be used to bypass burdensome procurement processes. So, for example, where you need multiple tenders to purchase spare parts for an Eskom power plant, we can go and get those parts quickly and easily without going through an onerous tender process or the like. And but those are the kind of things that we'd be looking for.
Yeah, definitely. And Mr. Zungula, one of the other crises that South Africa faces, though, is the collapsing, in fact, rail system that others would argue that it has already collapsed. Is it being given enough attention? And what are you hoping to hear from the president in this particular regard?
Bongi, we do not have any hope in Mr. Ramaphosa. We do not have any faith in him. We do not have any confidence in him. Because clearly, if you were to read the Western Cape High Court judgment, it spoke about a president that acts in bad faith. It is the judges themselves that said the president acted in bad faith. He was retaliating. Even if you look at the remarks by the former Chief Justice in the Phala report, it speaks to the character of the president, which is Mr. Ramaphosa. Therefore, just by those 2 documents, you cannot have any sense of hope in Mr. Ramaphosa because he's not in that position to advance the interests of the country. That is why the issue of the infrastructure, there's no action if you look at the entire country, all of the crises that we have, there is no priority on the side of the government, particularly the president, to resolve anything that is going wrong in our country. We've got the highest unemployment rate. He does nothing. Instead, he goes to all of these countries, takes up more loans to further put the country in debt. So he's not a person that could be trusted to govern in the best interests of the country. So we do not have any hope, no confidence in him.
Now, Sinawo, your party has threatened that you will not allow the president to address once again. And we've seen how this, story ends. It ends with EFF MPs outside of the chambers and the president continuing. How are you going to do things differently this time?
Look, let's see how it will end this time. The conditions in which our people are facing are extremely dire, which is why the EFF called for a national shutdown on the 20th of March 2023. They are unprecedented. Cyril Ramaphosa is ranking himself as the worst president this country has ever been seized with. Every week, he seems to be able to find a creative way to subject our people to misery. Even if not the increase of petrol and fuel prices, it is the increase in electricity costs, it is the increase in the repo rates, it is the increase in violent crimes, the increase in gender-based violence. There's no sector or sphere of society. It's the collapse of the railway network. It's car crashes and truck crashes and gas tanker explosions on our roads. The Cyril Ramaphosa presidency is a nightmare. And if it means that we must be killed or beaten up in parliament to show that this man no longer holds the right or jurisdiction to address our people, that is a money launderer, that is a tax evader, that is someone who has undermined our constitution, has broken the oath of office. If us exposing that and saying that he has no right to hold that office and speak to our people and speak on the state of the nation which he has caused to deteriorate, then so be it. We'll see on that day where we will end up.
I'm going to go around the virtual room, as it were, to then get your sense before we run out of time on another issue that is, of course, looming as we head towards the State of the Nation address. Of course, some reports suggesting that the president may announce changes to his cabinet just before the State of the Nation address. Others seem to suggest afterwards. But of course, expectations are high to see how he then reshuffles if his cabinet, if at all he does. I'll start with you, Mr. Zungula. What are your expectations when the president, finally announces to the nation the changes that he makes to his cabinet? Because I spoke to an analyst here on the show yesterday who says that we need a high-performing cabinet that is going to be able to tackle the challenges that South Africa is facing.
Mr. Ramaphosa has proven time and time again that his appointments in cabinet are not in the best interest of the country. For example, the former Minister of Public Service resigned months ago, and that position is still vacant. We've got an underperforming Minister of Employment and Labour, also serving as a Minister of Public Service. But if there was any sense of priority in terms of resolving the issues and actually having a high-performing cabinet, definitely the president at that particular time would have made sure that he can't combine, responsibilities for one Mr. Ngesi that is also failing. Now, that clearly shows that we've got a president, even with this cabinet reshuffle, people must not expect anything because that cabinet reshuffle is not done in the interest of the people, and all of those ministers will fail just like they've been failing. So that is the true state of the matter.
Let me move on then to you, Mr. Mileham. Are you hopeful that this, the changes that could potentially be made here could bring the desired outcome?
Well, I think there are a number of obvious changes that need to happen. I think the first one would be Minister Lindiwe Sisulu, who has been an absolute disaster in the tourism ministry, and that's been emphasized by the latest 1 billion rand Tottenham Hotspur's proposed deal. We see also Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who was very overbearing and impossible to deal with during the COVID pandemic, and who voted against President Ramaphosa, so I'd expect to see her on her way out. I would also expect, from an energy perspective, massive changes. I would expect Gwede Mantashe to go. He's been a stumbling block in the rollout of additional procurement of new generation capacity. And equally, I would expect to see Pravin Gordhan go because of the slow progress in sorting out the problems at Eskom and unbundling Eskom into its three separate entities. So I would expect to see some widespread changes in cabinet, apart from the vacancies and the like that need to be filled.
All right, to you, Mr. Singh.
Yeah, I do not believe, and as the IFP, we do not believe that reshuffle of cabinet is going to be a panacea to all the country's problems and all the woes that we find ourselves in. Until such time that the leader, the captain of the ship, becomes a dictator. He needs to become a benevolent dictator, knowing exactly, I see Mileham was smiling, knowing exactly what the country wants, putting people there in charge where he can crack the whip, putting people who are competent, who know and understand their portfolios. And sometimes I think we focus too much on the cabinet. We should also be focusing on the public servants, the directors general and everybody else that are within those departments. And unless there's proper management and understanding of what's happening within the country, I think merely just changing the deck and with new people is not going to be the panacea. So President Ramaphosa, you need to become this benevolent dictator, crack the whip on behalf of the country. Otherwise, 2024 is coming and you know what's going to happen then. There are going to be new people that are going to be cracking the whip on competent cabinet ministers.
Sinawo, we have about 20 seconds. I almost said minutes. That's the entire show. We have about 20 seconds. Your reaction, in fact, your expectation to the looming cabinet reshuffle.
Look, any cabinet reshuffle within the context of leadership of the ANC is an exercise in futility. So no one can speak about specific ministers who are absolute failures, because who are the ones who are successful in anything? The Minister of Trade and Industry has collapsed my businesses. The Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies is failing to migrate South Africa into modern means of communications and telecommunications and communications in South Africa in general. The Minister in the presidency serves no meaningful purpose, but as a factional leader within government, who exactly can be identified and reshuffled to prove competency that they have proven before into a new role. So there's no leadership in the ANC that can exhibit an ability to rescue South Africa from the crisis that it is in. The entire ANC must go, and there's no reprieve our people are going to find. No cabinet reshuffle will fix our problems.
All right. Thank you so much to you all for your time, and see you all in Cape Town. Let's see if how do you react then to the State of the Nation address. Hopefully, I can be able to catch some of you for a conversation. That is the DA's Kevin Mileham, Sinawo Tambo, EFF spokesperson, Vuyo Zungula, ATM President, Narend Singh, IFP Chiefwhip. And on the other side of this, we are in conversation with analysts looking at the latest developments around the Deputy President, and of course also looking at the State of the Nation address again, and as well as the looming cabinet reshuffle.